Ever wondered what it would be like to discover something new every single day? Welcome to my channel, where curiosity leads the way. From interesting ideas to engaging content, there's always something here for you. Make sure to subscribe and be part of this journey of discovery.
My wife had a way of smiling when she thought she'd already won. I noticed it the first time she brought home her promotion papers, that slow, satisfied curl at the corner of her mouth, like a cat that had already swallowed the bird and was just waiting for you to notice the feathers. Back then, I thought it was confidence. 14 years later, I understood it was something else entirely. My name is not important. What matters is that I'm a 51-year-old man who owns a mid-size landscaping company in Central Ohio. Nothing glamorous. We maintain commercial properties, corporate parks, a few golf courses. I employ 23 people, I pay my taxes, and for most of our marriage I came home with dirt under my fingernails while my wife came home with a briefcase and a title that kept getting longer. She was a senior director of operations at a medical device company. The kind of job with a corner office, a company car, and a calendar so full she sometimes forgot we had dinner plans until I was already sitting at the table. I didn't resent her success. I want to be clear about that. I was proud of her, genuinely. When she made director, I took her to the nicest restaurant in Columbus. When she got the senior title, I surprised her with a weekend in Charleston. I never once made her feel like her career was a problem. What I didn't know, what I was too busy running payroll and managing crews and trusting her to see, was that sometime around year 11, my wife had quietly decided I was furniture. Not an enemy, not even a disappointment, just something that was there when she needed it and invisible when she didn't. I found out the way a lot of men find out, not through some dramatic confrontation or a lipstick on the collar moment. I found out through a single text message I was never supposed to see. It was a Tuesday in March. My wife had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. I wasn't snooping. I was just moving it so I could set down a cup of coffee I'd made for her. The screen lit up. I wasn't trying to read it, but the name at the top stopped me cold. The name was Scott Work. The message preview said, "Last night was everything. I keep thinking about your hands." I set the coffee down very carefully. I picked up my own phone. I went and sat in my truck in the garage, and I sat there for 40 minutes without starting the engine. Here's something people don't tell you about that moment. It's not rage, not at first. It's a strange, almost clinical clarity. Like someone just handed you the answer key to a test you'd been failing for years, and suddenly every wrong answer made perfect sense. The weekends she worked late, the conference she went to twice in 1 year when she'd never done that before. The way she'd started closing the bathroom door to take calls, the slight change in how she laughed. A little too loose, a little too young. Everything rearranged itself into a pattern I didn't want to see but couldn't unsee. I went back inside before she came downstairs. I handed her the coffee. I kissed her on the cheek. I told her I had an early site visit and I left for work. I did not delete anything. I did not confront her. I did not call her out over breakfast like some scene in a made-for-TV movie. I called my attorney instead. Her name is Patricia, and she has been handling business contracts for my company for 9 years. She is sharp, methodical, and completely unsentimental about money. I told her what I'd seen. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Don't touch anything. Don't move any money. Don't say a word to her. Come see me Thursday." I went to see her Thursday. The first thing Patricia told me was to start documenting everything, not illegally, not obsessively, just systematically. Dates, times, anything that seemed relevant. She also told me to have my financial records in order, because in my experience, she said, when one partner has been checked out of the marriage emotionally for a while, they've often been quietly shifting things financially too. I went home that night and I started paying attention in a way I hadn't in years. What I found over the next 3 weeks was not dramatic. There were no secret accounts, no missing money. My wife wasn't stealing from me. But I did find evidence that she had been putting in for joint expenses, our vacation fund, our home renovation savings, while simultaneously directing more of her own income into a personal account I hadn't known she'd opened 8 months earlier. Not illegal, not even necessarily sinister on its own. But it told me everything I needed to know about which way the wind had been blowing. I also, around this time, made a quiet call to a licensed private investigator. I want to be very precise about what I asked for and what I didn't. I did not ask him to follow her everywhere or dig through her private communications. I asked him to document her activities in public spaces on the evening she told me she was working late. On 2 specific occasions, I had reason to believe she would not, in fact, be working. He came back with photographs. Restaurant, bar, hotel lobby. The same man in all three locations, a tall guy with the kind of jawline that belongs in a toothpaste commercial. This was Scott. I didn't need to confirm it, but I did, because I am not a man who acts on assumptions. I kept going to work. I kept making dinner on the nights I got home first. I kept asking about her day. I kept being completely, utterly, unremarkably normal. My wife had no idea. Then came the conversation that changed everything. It was a Sunday evening in April. We were sitting on the back patio. The weather had just started to turn, that first real week of spring where the air smells like something waking up. I had a beer. She had a glass of wine. We were doing that comfortable seeming thing that couples who have stopped really talking to each other do. Both present, both essentially alone. She said, "I need to talk to you about something." I said, "Okay." She said she had been offered a leadership retreat opportunity through her company, a week-long program end of May. Leadership development, team building, networking. Very prestigious, she said. Very competitive to get into. I said that sounded great. She said the thing was, Scott. She used his name without a flicker, without a single hesitation. Scott from her division had also been selected. They'd probably be traveling together, maybe sharing some of the organized excursions. I looked at her. She met my eyes with that smile, that cat with a bird smile. "I just wanted to be transparent," she said. Transparent. I turned that word over in my head like a stone I found on a riverbank. I looked at it from every angle. I considered everything it was pretending to be and everything it actually was. Transparent. She was telling me so she could say she'd told me. She was confessing the shape of the thing while hiding the substance of it, and she was doing it with a smile because she had already calculated that I would say nothing, do nothing, accept it the way I had apparently accepted everything else for longer than I wanted to think about. I took a sip of my beer. I said, "Actually, this might be perfect timing." She tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" "I've been meaning to talk to you too," I said. "I've had some paperwork I've been putting off. Your trip would give me the time to get it sorted." She made a small, amused sound. She assumed I was talking about something to do with the business. I let her assume that. That week, I met with Patricia again. I told her I was ready to move forward. She filed the petition the following Monday morning. My wife was at a project review meeting when she was served. Her assistant called me, not to be cruel, she just didn't know who else to call, and told me my wife had gone very pale and asked to reschedule the rest of her afternoon. I was supervising a crew at a corporate park on the other side of the city when I got that call. I thanked the assistant, told her not to worry, and went back to walking the property with my crew foreman. What happened next was the part I had expected intellectually but still found difficult in practice. Her family called first. Her mother, her sister, and her brother-in-law, all within the same 24-hour window. Her mother cried and told me I was destroying the family. Her sister told me I was being cruel and impulsive. Her brother-in-law, who I had genuinely liked, told me I owed it to everyone to at least try counseling first. Then came our mutual friends. A couple we'd known for a decade invited us both to dinner separately. The kind of carefully orchestrated social intervention that people think is helpful and is actually just uncomfortable for everyone. The husband told me man to man that my wife was devastated and that I needed to think hard about whether I was making a permanent decision based on something temporary. I listened to all of them. I thanked them for caring. I did not tell them what I knew, because I didn't need to defend myself to anyone who had already made up their mind without asking me a single question. There was one exception. My oldest friend, a guy I've known since we were 12 years old, called me on a Wednesday night. He didn't take sides. He didn't lecture me. He just said, "You doing okay?" I told him I was. He said, "All right, let me know if you need anything." That was the whole conversation. I have never been more grateful for a phone call in my life. The part that genuinely surprised me was my wife's response to the filing itself. I had expected anger. I had expected tears. What I got, in our first formal communication through our attorneys, was a document listing what she felt constituted her fair share of our shared assets. A figure that was roughly 60% of everything we built together, with a specific line item requesting the house. I read it once. I set it down. I called Patricia and told her to proceed. Here's what my wife did not know because she had not paid close enough attention and because she had been so certain for so long that I was not the kind of person who planned. When I had started my landscaping company 16 years ago, I had structured it on the advice of a business attorney as a sole proprietorship with a formal operating agreement. My wife had signed a document at the time, a standard spousal acknowledgement used in Ohio for business ownership purposes, that had a specific clause in it regarding business valuation in the event of dissolution of the marriage. It was not a prenuptial agreement in the traditional sense. It was a business protection document, but its language was clear and it had been drafted by someone who was very good at their job. The company was not a marital asset in the way she had assumed it was. I watched her attorney's response to that information arrive in Patricia's office. Patricia called me afterward and she was, for the first time in 9 years of working together, audibly pleased. My wife called me directly that evening. It was the first time we'd spoken without attorneys present in 6 weeks. Her voice was different. The ease was gone. She said she thought we should talk. Privately, without the lawyers. I said I was happy to talk. She said she felt the process had gotten away from both of us. She said she thought there was a lot of history between us worth considering before we made anything final. I said I agreed that we had a lot of history. She said maybe they'd been spending too much time apart and not enough time working on things. I said that was probably true. There was a pause. She said, I just think we could find a way to make this work. I thought about 14 years. I thought about the text message on a Tuesday morning in March. I thought about a man named Scott and a hotel lobby, and photographs I'd looked at exactly twice and never wanted to look at again. I thought about a word, transparent. I said, I appreciate you saying that, I really do, but I think we're past the point where that's possible. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I know about the investigation. I said, I know you do. She said, that's an invasion of privacy. I said, public places aren't private. Another pause. Longer this time. Was it always going to end this way? She asked. It was the first genuinely honest question she'd asked me in longer than I could remember, and I found, to my own surprise, that I wanted to answer it honestly. I said, no, it wasn't always going to end this way. I heard her exhale slowly. But it ended this way, I said, and I think we both know why. She didn't respond to that. After a moment, she said she'd have her attorney reach out to Patricia tomorrow. I said that was fine. We said goodnight and I hung up, and I stood in my kitchen for a long time looking out the window at the backyard where my wife and I had sat on a Sunday evening in April while she told me about a work retreat and smiled like she'd already won. The settlement was finalized 11 weeks later. She did not get 60%. She did not get the house. What she got was fair. Patricia made sure of that because I had specifically asked her to make sure it was fair, not punitive. I'm not a vindictive person. I never wanted to destroy her. I just refused to be the one who got destroyed. The hardest part, in the end, was not the legal process. It was the week after the papers were signed when I drove past a restaurant we used to go to for our anniversary, a little Italian place on the east side of the city, and I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, unable to make myself drive away. 14 years, 2 people, 1 life that no longer existed. I'm not going to tell you I walked away clean. Divorce doesn't work like that. There are things that stay with you. A habit of reaching for someone on the other side of the bed, a reflex to call and check in at the end of a long day, the way a certain kind of Sunday afternoon light can still, out of nowhere, feel like grief. But I also want to tell you this. 3 months after the settlement, I walked my property on a clear October morning. Frost on the grass, sky that blue that only happens in fall. 23 employees who'd shown up because they trusted the business I'd built. A company that was mine, that I had protected, that was still standing. And I thought about what she'd said. Was it always going to end this way? No, it wasn't. But I was still standing too. And some mornings in the life I'm carefully and quietly building now, that is more than enough. People ask me sometimes what the turning point was. They expect me to say it was the text message, or the photographs, or the moment my wife smiled across the patio and used the word transparent like a shield she'd already decided I couldn't see through. But honestly, the turning point was quieter than any of that. It was the moment I stopped waiting for someone else to tell me what was happening and started paying attention myself. There's something I'd come to understand about the way consequences work in a person's life. They don't arrive with fanfare. They don't announce themselves. They accumulate slowly, invisibly, in the space between the choices we make and the ones we avoid making. My wife made her choices over years, small ones at first, then larger ones, then finally the kind that can't be walked back. And I made mine too. For a long time, mine were choices of inattention, of comfort over honesty, of keeping the peace instead of asking the harder questions. I'm not excusing what she did, but I'm also not pretending I played no part in how things drifted. What I want to say to anyone watching this is something I had to learn the hard way. Intelligence isn't just about being smart in a classroom or successful in a career. Real intelligence is the willingness to look at your own life clearly, even when what you see is painful. My wife was educated, accomplished, and genuinely sharp. But she made the mistake that a lot of capable people make. She confused confidence with immunity. She assumed that because she was good at her job, she was good at everything. She assumed that because I hadn't reacted, I hadn't noticed. She confused my patience for blindness. Patience and blindness are not the same thing. Silence and surrender are not the same thing. The people who underestimate quiet, steady individuals are often the ones most surprised by what those individuals have been building, while no one was watching. I spent months being methodical, careful, and completely boring on purpose. I talked to my attorney, I organized my documents, I asked the right questions of the right people. I did not act out of rage because rage is expensive and imprecise. I acted out of clarity, and clarity, I've found, is something you can only access when you've made peace with what you're looking at. The other thing I've come to believe, and this story is the reason I believe it, is that character is not something you perform in the good moments. It's what you default to when everything is falling apart. I had the opportunity to be vindictive. My attorney could have pushed harder. I could have made the process ugly. I chose not to, not because I was soft, but because I thought carefully about the kind of person I wanted to be when it was over. How you end things matters. How you carry yourself through the worst chapter of your life is the thing you'll remember longest. I'm still standing. My business is still standing. And every morning I walk out onto a job site and watch my crew work. I know that what I built is mine, because I built it with my own hands, protected it with my own foresight, and refused to let anyone's carelessness take it from me. That's not luck. That's the result of choices, made one at a time over a long time. And it's available to anyone willing to make them.